I know you've seen them because there are tons of videos telling you how to make money. Anything from how to generate leads, how to build a brand, how to build your website, to content marketing, to all sorts of complicated sales techniques. It is overwhelming with information on how to make money. But the one thing that everyone forgets to tell you is how to keep it. So welcome to the Brave Fixers channel. We are a construction company located in Chicago, Illinois, but I like to make content here that's related to risk management, quality, and respect. Respect for the trades and just building respect for work and careers in general. So let's get right into it. So there are two main reasons why companies fail. The first one, and I think the most common, is that they just can't make enough money. People don't know how to bill right, don't know what to charge, that sort of thing. But the second option is that they can't keep the money. It just goes out as fast as it comes in. And a lot of people don't even understand why this is happening in their organization. So I'm going to go over 5 major reasons why businesses lose money so that we can look at why they lose the money and then prepare a plan to not lose the money. So before we get into the main meat and potatoes of this, I want to give you a little bit of a thought experiment. Now imagine you're running your business, it's a normal day, and you get a call out of the blue. A friend of a friend or a friend of a past client needs some work done, video editing, they need an addition put on their house, they need the drywall patched, whatever it is. And as they're explaining the job, you can tell that this is a big job. This is the biggest fish that you've came across. And let's just imagine it's a $50,000 job. Now, as you're thinking about this, you're getting more information from the prospect. What's going through your mind? Are you getting excited? Or are you getting a little apprehensive? But the most important thing about this job, this $50,000 project, is that the last largest project that you did was $10,000. So this is $40,000 more than you're used to. It's a lot of money. So what are you doing? Are you taking the job? Or are you telling this prospect to go find someone else? Are you referring them to someone else? Hopefully you said you're referring this client to someone else. Because inexperienced business owners get excited when they hear big numbers. Some people even think that maybe all of the worries of just scraping by are about to be behind them. They are high rolling, taking on big jobs for the first time, blah, 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 blah. I've seen a lot of people in this space. They like to brag about how big the job is, that sort of thing. But throughout this video series and in this introductory video, I'm going to tell you why you should say no, why that is the right answer, and what to do about it, and how to eventually get to a point where you can take that $50,000 job without being worried. And even though I run a construction company and my experience is based in construction, I have built this list from a first principles basis, so these should apply. All of them definitely apply to anyone in the services industry, but they should mostly apply to even companies that are product-based. And under my leadership, my company has also confronted and overcome, or at least have a plan to address all of these issues. So I do know what I'm talking about. So first of all, related to the thought experiment, the number one aspect of business failure is, you guessed it, an increase in deliverables value. Now, why is this? In short, monetary value is representative of complexity. Now, sometimes it's hard to tell off of the face of it during that first phone call with a potential client how complex a problem is. But chances are, if you haven't done a project that's more than 50% of the value of the potential project in the past, then there are complexities within the project that you are going to miss. Even if this $50,000 job comes across your desk and you've finished another project that's $30,000, there's that $20,000 gap is still going to have some unknowns in there that you're going to have to face. And these things you just really can't plan for. They come up and it's a learning experience and they're unpredictable and they cost money. So if the project that you've done in the past is less than 50% the value of this potential job, then you're opening yourself up to a world of risk and complexities that you don't even understand. And unless you have some money in the bank, unless you're ready to lose money on that project for the learning experience, then you're going to be in a pretty big surprise eventually. Most likely anyways. There are some exceptions, but we'll get to that eventually. So overly complex deliverables bleed a company dry because when they're overly complex, you don't know that it's happening, and neither do your employees. So your employees might be dragging on a project, or you don't quite know how to do something, so you got to go back onto YouTube to learn it, so on and so forth, and these things just compound on top of each other. So these complexities, 1, 2, 3, might be a breeze, no problem at all. But if you get up around 5, 10 unforeseeable occurrences or unforeseen occurrences, then your profit margins are going to be very thin. The second reason is that there's an effect of compounding mistakes. A 10% mistake is a big mistake, but a 10% mistake on a $1,000 job is $100. You forgot to buy an extra gallon of paint or something like that. A 10% mistake on a $10,000 job is $1,000. So you might have forgot to account for nails on a construction project or staples on a large project, and that $1,000 could be very easily eaten up. So if you extrapolate that out to a $500,000 or $1 million project, then a 10% mistake can really bankrupt you really quick. So how do you manage this aspect of risk? Because we all need to grow. We all want the business to grow until we get to a comfortable size. The hint I've already brushed at a little bit, which the good rule of thumb that I've heard other people talk about and I've used myself is this 50% rule. So if a project comes around that's $50,000, and if you have not completed a successful project at $25,000 or more, then you should not take it unless you're ready to lose some money because there's just going to be some unforeseens. But you can slowly inch that 50% up. You can actually do it pretty quickly if you and your team are fast learners. You can take that $20,000 job, then a $40,000 job after that, and then you're probably pretty good to take on an $80,000 job. I personally would book quite a few of the 40s and then maybe jump up to 60 before going to 80, but to each his own. You could probably handle it if you've done a $40,000 job before. And recently, I turned down like a $500,000, $600,000 addition on a commercial building because the biggest project I've done in the past is like $50,000, $60,000. And so I'm barely even above the 10% mark. And I'm absolutely certain that if I take that deposit, I'm cooked. The business is over. There's going to be something that comes up. I'm not going to be able to afford it. And bankruptcy is just waiting right around the corner. So in sum, 1, cost and complexity are directly linked. 2, the more expensive a project is, the more expensive the cost of goods sold are going to be. 3, you're going to want to grow your managerial maturity as you grow project cost. Because even if you know the pitfalls and the complexities that you could fall into, your whole team needs to know as well. And 4, follow the 50% rule. So we talked about how an increase in project value increases the complexity and increases the unknowns. Now we're going to talk a lot about unknowns. So the second most important risk area that introduces unknown uncertainties into your organization is a change in area. Now, what do I mean by area? Businesses operate in a lot of different areas, and you're going to have to figure this out for yourself. Because some businesses like mine are local, basically brick and mortar businesses. So my service area is not going to include Mexico or anything like that. But a lot of businesses run online. A lot of businesses run online that speak exclusively English. So that is going to change your business area, because then that Mexican prospect that speaks English is potentially in your area. So you'll have to look over your primary business activities, who you could sell to and who you want to appeal to figure out what your home base area is. But the thing is, sometimes you want to change your area, and that's where the risk really comes in. Because, for one, it's really easy to forget what we know. So if you know what you know about your business area, then sometimes it's not so easy to see what makes your area special, or that you have a special edge in your particular area and not another one. So to move into a new area, no one is going to be able to explain to you how your business is going to interact with that area. So you're going to have to run a little bit of a trial and error sequence to figure out how to work in that new area, because the people might be motivated by different things. If you're a contractor, the dirt is going to be different, and that's going to change a lot of things. Some regions build basements, some regions don't build basements. So if you wanted to move your waterproofing basement business over to Oregon, you're going to fail. There's very few basements over there. Same sort of thing. You might be making videos on YouTube and then decide to shift your videos to Instagram. And if you try to apply the same format, you're probably going to fail, because the context of each platform is going to be different. The people within it are going to be looking for different things. And sometimes it's not so easy to tell exactly how those things are, what they are, and what people want. So you have a few basic types of uncertainties that hit pretty much every business on the planet. Number one is government, municipal regulations, building codes, things like that. Number two is labor and unions. Sentiments change from region to region. And even if you're dealing with the same type of demographic, the same white guy from New York is going to have a different perspective on how much he wants to get paid and what his material conditions at work should be compared to the white guy in West Virginia. So you need to be aware of these things, and consider them as well. Number three are your ecological conditions. The details of this are impossible to delineate. Like, you have the weather, of course, but then you also have all the different ecologies, the business environment, the social environment, and so on and so forth that falls under this ecology. Number four is just purely strain on the organization and its resources. If one of your teammates has to be driving back and forth from a town 3 hours away because you're trying to get some work going there, then that team member is going to be exhausted. They're not going to be as productive, so on and so forth. So how do you grow into new areas? I think the number one rule of thumb here is just do it slowly. Take on a small project, see how it goes, and assume that you're not going to make any money. Because I guarantee if you're trying to move into a new area, a new business environment, because you're not making enough money in the one that you're currently in, it's probably going to fail unless you can see exactly why it will be more successful in that area. Because you're just opening yourself up to more complexities, more uncertainties. And the more time that you have to spend figuring something out, the more money, it's more strain on the organization. So do a lot of research. And make sure to track how that one small project goes really well. And then if you're a brick and mortar business, consider opening a regional office. If it's a few hours away, then opening a little storefront or something like that is going to get you some local recognition and help with the strain on the organization as well. So I think at this point, the link between risk and uncertainty should be getting pretty clear. But to summarize this specific point, businesses are not geographically locked, and business area includes other dimensions and ecological exposures. So let's move on to the next thing that's similar but in a different direction: providing new services. Successful businesses provide a certain product at a certain price in a certain domain. This is your specialty. You're going to want to know it well. And you're going to want to slow down too, because there's no saying how long it takes to build this specialty. But if you're at the beginning of your journey, you should be able to kind of get an idea of what you want your specialty to go towards. So why is offering new services risky? Well, it's kind of like starting a new business. A new service is going to have an entirely different group of people that want those services. And sometimes the differences between services are very subtle and hard to see exactly why they differ. There is no way to estimate the amount of time or money you need to put in to become proficient at a specific offering. And oftentimes people try to offer new services during the slowdowns, which is very risky. So then why would you even want to offer new services if yours is already working? Well, you might not, but you might be a new business looking to grow. You might be an existing business trying to grow as well that feels stagnant or like they have more capacity than they're using. So in general, it's just purely growth, to make more money, to hire new employees, and so on and so forth. So how do you do it successfully? You can write a business plan. Like I said, it's just like starting a new business to offer new services. So write a mini business plan analyzing all of the KPIs and COGS and whatever else is relevant for your business and try putting it in action. You could take on a partner. This is especially for big projects. So if you're like a road contractor thinking of getting into bridge construction, then you might want to partner up with a bridge contractor when you have the job on the line for the bridge so that you guys can do it collaboratively. And then just prepare to lose money. If you aren't prepared to lose money, then just stick with what's already working. So everybody will be offering new services at some point in time in their business. But if you remember that offering new services is kind of like starting a business within your business, then you will avoid the pitfalls of trying to do it to make more money when you're strapped for cash, or trying to grow when you don't have the capital ready to cover learning and mistakes. But you 100% do not want to offer new services when you have personnel changes, which is the third point behind business failure for today's video. So what kind of personnel is risky to have change? Your key people. For me, I have some people on my team that if they left, quit, got another job, that'd be kind of fine. I'd be able to find someone to be able to do their job fairly quickly. Those are not the key people for the most part. Now, all of them collectively might represent the key people, but we'll talk about that in a second. To figure out who your key people are, you need to ask yourself who's getting, who's doing, and who's accounting for the work. Because those three pillars are absolutely necessary in every single business, and neither one of them are replaceable. You can't have the people that are doing the work also trying to get the work. Those are two completely different specialties. So once you've identified who these key people are, then you'll be able to tell when shifts in those people introduces new risks. Anytime someone new comes on board, anytime someone who's existing leaves, you are opening the door to risk. Just like breaking in a new pair of shoes, employees need time to learn their jobs and to understand all of the different complexities within it. And just like breaking in a pair of shoes, you can't explain to the pair of shoes all of the steps that you need to take in it to be able to break it in. You actually need to put the shoes on and start walking. And sometimes the key people aren't even doing anything for the business. So for example, if you have a founder of a business who's since retired, he might be 60, 70 years old or something like that, but a lot of the employees remember having this retired person as their leader. So even though they're still retired and affiliated with the company just loosely, like they still have the same leadership role. All of the people that they were leading are probably still allegiant towards them. So even if your silent founder or your silent partner that was working with the business 10 years ago leaves, you might have a major morale issue on your hands within the business. But fortunately, there are some ways to successfully change your personnel and speed up the learning process, the break-in process, as it were. And the number one way that you are going to benefit from this is by writing SOPs, standard operating procedures. This comes from a book called The E-Myth. I can't remember who wrote it, but the premise is that we have this myth in America of the entrepreneur that goes and innovates and does something new and through the strength of their will creates some massive business with a lot of success. But that's a myth. Honestly, it's mostly marketing for the leaders of these companies. The fact of the matter is that what makes businesses successful is standardization and making sure that everyone within the organization is on the same page. So the author of the E-Myth discovered this when he went to a hotel and asked the person working the front desk how they knew how to do everything the same way as everyone else does. And the employee behind the desk was like, oh, well, it's all very simple. And they pulled out a huge binder, a 3-ring binder, and said, it's all in here. Every procedure, every this, that, and the other thing. So that's when he realized that the myth is wrong. But have you realized it? Do you have the binder yet? Or a digital binder? I know they from personal experience, they take a lot of time to build up, but they're absolutely necessary. For example, in this stretch of my business, I'm starting to bring on more administrative help to work on the back end. And so I'm starting to lose track of exactly what's going on and how we're doing things, which is bad because that creates so much reliance on my admin. If something was to happen and he had to leave immediately and we didn't have these SOPs, then we're cooked. Then I've got to go through the whole learning experience that he just went through to catch myself up to speed again. So creating SOPs is one great way to accelerate the learning process, but how do you know when you've finished the learning process or you're almost there? Well, you'll be bored. Your employees will be bored. The job becomes boring when you know what's going on. That's not a bad thing. Like, we want a boring job because a boring job is a job that doesn't have surprises and risks and losses associated with it, and everyone knows what they're doing. For the people inside of your organization as well, changing the circumstances, changing the relationships between people can be just as disruptive as bringing in new people. So keep an eye out for when you give that guy the raise and he moves into another position and the guy below him comes up too, because you might be looking at some kind of double whammy there with both of these people learning their new jobs. Another way to avoid this one is by creating a succession plan. Now, this could be as simple as when someone's doing good on a construction project as a laborer, you can tell them, hey, if you're still doing well in 3 months, then I'll give you a raise and I'll make you a lead or something like that. But this can also be a succession plan for your CEO. It could be that key personnel that's retired that everyone kind of sees as a thought leader or just a leader in general. You want to have a succession plan in place so that the things that the one retired person is doing for the company can be provided by someone else, and that you don't wind up with a surprise gap in the system at some point in time. And just like all the other ones, you'll want to limit your risk exposures for as many other things as possible whenever you're going through personnel changes. So keep in mind that just because someone's job description says XYZ, they might be doing G, D, and F for the company that you don't even understand. So you want to make sure that you mitigate this risk with a lot of SOPs and develop succession plans for particularly key personnel. And this will help mitigate some of the obvious issues, but it just takes time. It takes time for the shoe to get broken in. It takes time for people to learn. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're not taking on any other unnecessary risk during that time period. Big surprise on the next one. You don't even need shifting personnel to fall into a trap with your team. No matter how long you've been a manager, you can still suffer from managerial immaturity. Now, how do you know if your management skills are immature? First of all, there's a good rule of thumb. If your company is growing at more than 15% year on year, then chances are you need to do some serious work on how your management team is managing. Otherwise, they're going to become quickly immature and incapable of handling the increased company size. But there's also a series of questions you can ask yourself. So number one, is your management style the same as it was before a period of substantial growth? Remember that 15% year-on-year figure. Number two, is extra work unnecessarily stressing your team? Should the extra work not be stressing them out as much? Well, then there might be some administrative bottlenecks going on. Number three, do you know how much work you can take on before your team starts to get stressed? If not, then you're just rolling the dice on how much work you can take on, and you're probably going to stress out your team, and you're probably an immature manager in that respect. Number four, is there a standard set of practices for everyone on the team? Number five, is anyone complaining, especially your long-term employees? If so, there's probably some truth to it. Number six, have you noticed a performance drop? Is your bottom line going down? Is your profit margin suffering? That sort of thing. And number seven, and most importantly, is are you still making all of the decisions? This is a question that's supposed to let you know if you're a micromanager or not. The follow-up to this is your team allowed to make mistakes? Might seem like a weird question, but if your team is unable to make mistakes, then you're micromanaging them. Stop it. They're people too. They can make choices on their own. You just need to guide them and let them know what's going on. So immature management is one of the main reasons why great upstart companies fail, is because they might get an edge on the competition and start threatening some of their other competitors, taking some of the market share. But if they don't grow the managerial maturity, then the managerial maturity of their competitors is going to crush them. So how do you increase maturity and know that you're somewhere within safe bounds? So there's evidence that luck, the marketplace, and the labor pool are not really determining factors for business success. In fact, the vision, management, innovation, adaptability, and reputation of a company are much more important. And a lot of these things are built through a mature management. The next thing is growth. A business that's growing at 50% or more year on year is going to be a different business every single year that it's growing at that pace. And even if you're growing at just 15% a year, then you're really going to want to make sure that you're putting substantial investments into developing the management team in your company. So you're probably safe if, number one, your organization's size has not grown recently. Number two, you're fully aware, without a question of doubt, that your company can take on more work and do more revenue without stressing its team and resources. Number three is if your low-level employees are having a low rate of turnover and your high-level employees are self-motivated, autonomous, and also turning over at a lower rate, which should be even substantially lower than your low-level employees' rate. And lastly, if there's a plan in place for succession and a substantial amount of SOPs, then you're probably doing pretty well as well. So, managerial maturity and changing personnel are very closely linked because it's an HR sort of risk exposure. So a lot of the same solutions are going to work for both, which is good stuff. Two birds, one stone sort of thing. So if you didn't catch it already, all of the risk exposures that I covered today are almost directly tied with growth. People take on these risks when they're trying to grow, that is. So the goal isn't to completely avoid all of these risks. The goal is to confront these risks one by one in a way that increases the collective knowledge of your organization and makes the organization more robust in the future to those risk exposures. So for example, if you have a very mature management system, then you can do a lot. You can take on a lot of risk because the management is probably going to catch when the KPIs are slipping and that sort of thing and not lose too much money before the project is over. The goal is to avoid unnecessary and existential risk. And the number one reason why people fall into these traps and these risk exposures completely ruin their business is because they get greedy, because they either want to grow at too rapid of a pace or they're not making enough money and they just, throw caution to the wind and go for it. And oftentimes these people fail, unfortunately. But it's also not an unfortunate fact because every business that fails, every entrepreneur that takes on a failed excursion into the world of business is literally doing everyone else a favor. And we should consider them heroes because that risk that they took on, the failure, it just adds that much more collective wisdom to the market and to people in general. And it's just good for society. And that's why we hold entrepreneurs on such a high pedestal in this country. But anyways, if you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you think the information is good and someone could benefit from it, share it to them. It would mean the absolute world to me. And if you're interested in learning more on this topic, I would recommend checking out The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, Managing the Profitable Construction Company by Thomas C. Schleifer. I hope I said that correctly. And lastly, The Blue Ocean Strategy, which was written by W. Chan Kim. So like I will always, thank you for watching and stay tuned for an in-depth video on each one of these risk exposures because I just wrote too much on this introductory script and I decided to just do 6 videos. So here we are. Thank you for watching. This is Lane with Brave Fixers and I will see you next time.